have been around for years, hundreds of years, and tokens are still used. It's something that's a coin that's not minted by the government, and it's not meant to be used in commerce necessarily. But it's come out of, token has been created out of necessity. And in the 1830s, there was a banking problem. There was another run on currency. People started hoarding real, quote unquote, real money. And as a matter of ingenuity and of just protecting one's own commerce, people started making their own tokens. In some cases, they were used as commerce. In many cases, they were used just as almost like a patriotic button, you know, to just offer an opinion on something. But tokens, I mean, they've been used for centuries. Tokens, this is the one on the right, happens to be a 1934 token to get across the Delaware Bridge. So tokens are everywhere, and you hear the word token. A token of love is having a wedding ring. A token of your appreciation for having, you know, worked for a decade or 50 years at a store, at a company, you get a little plaque. But Civil War tokens, and Rick had mentioned that there were about 8,000 different types of printed money during the Civil War, before the Civil War, when every bank could print its own money. As far as Civil War tokens were concerned, they are estimating, although there was no registry of token creation, up to possibly 10,000 different token styles have been created. And the designs were produced privately. They were, I'll show in a second what a die sinker is or was. But these could be created by firms. Many of them were created, they call them store cards, to kind of advertise your business. Some were created to actually be used as like a loyalty ticket, meaning if you buy something from my store, this is going to be worth 5 cents when you come back. But they were mostly in the north. It's very rare to see a token from the south. Some tokens were used as money. It was sort of like private commerce, and this was because cash was really hard to, tokens, coins were very, very difficult to obtain. Many people were hoarding them. As Rick had shared, especially in the South, the gold and silver had to be used for other purposes. People didn't have the raw material to be able to keep coinage going. And in 1864, tokens were made illegal in the United States as currency. Now the three major classes, there are several people who are in numismatic circles who object to the thought of a store card being considered a token. But we are just very broadly discussing this. So there are store cards, as I had mentioned, that often is going to have the advertisement for the store on one side to say what the store does. Come back to the store with, bring your token back. Patriotic tokens are another class of token, and these are becoming very collectible. They could be something that is about a person's passion, about their statement of courage. And then the third class is really a sutler token. And the sutlers are a group of people who supplied the troops, who actually went and traveled with the armies and were sort of like a mobile PX. And they were entitled to issue their own coinage. So a sutler token is a special class of token, but it's not something that you'd exchange at the local dry goods store. You had to spend your token money at that particular sutler. And who made the tokens? There was actually a profession called a die sinker. And we happened to meet a person today who actually is a die sinker, and he's in this area. And we hope to meet up with him again very soon on the subject of even creating some coinage that we could all use together in a commemorative opportunity and educational opportunity. But these were people who were skilled trades. And often they were engravers, often they were people who were metal workers. There were standard dies and standard planchets that were used, and I'll show up close in a minute that a die sinker had available to him several models. So you'll see several that always have ivy around them, or always have the Liberty cap on them, or always have guns, or whatever it is. So the die sinker had some artistry. You could be able to build his own vision of what the coin should have to look like. Skilled, many were dies were handcrafted, and many of the die sinkers' names are associated with a particular style of coin, and there are registries of the rarity of the tokens and who were the sinkers. This coin that you can see on the lower right side is actually for a Bowman confectionery in 1862. We're trying to find out more about this particular coin itself because, or this token, we can find the confectionery store on the city registries. We know that the person had something to do with engraving and jewelry, who designed it, but on the opposite side it actually shows a telescope and an observatory. And we've tried to find out through the Western Maryland room, what was that? Why on earth would a confectionery have a telescope on the backside? That's still yet a mystery we're trying to figure out. But on the upper left, it's it's a Baltimore, it's a lottery token. Baltimore had quite a few people who were engravers and token makers. Not so many out here in Western Maryland. Confederate tokens, as I said, were quite rare. This one was they attributed it to someone who was a die sinker in Tennessee, and it just says a United South. You don't find them as very elaborate, probably because the access to metals was so difficult. Now the store and commercial trade tokens, one of our colleagues is a gentleman named Steve Hayden who runs a Civil War token business. And he's online all the time. And back to the Hagerstown token, that recently sold, I believe it's very rare, recently sold for like $2,750. So there is a new market for people who are collecting tokens, and not just not for the value of the coinage per se, but for the story behind it, which I think is, to me, the more fun side of it anyhow. But he was kind enough to send me some images of a couple different tokens from the Midwest, and one was from Illinois. It's from Freeport, Illinois, and it's for a brewery. But it's the Freeport Brewery, but it happens to be a woman's name on the token itself. On the right side, it's a Detroit woman who is a dry goods merchant. And so here you have women in industry as opposed to women sitting home knitting and just hoping that their husbands will come back. You see on the right side, it's again, they're beautifully modeled, and here you see the artistry. These you'll see typically the imagery of the shield, of whatever the die sinker chose to put into the image is what you get. And so it would be often that the store would hire somebody who was your engraver and die sinker to design something custom for that particular store. The patriotic tokens, again, you see quite a few that say Army, Navy. And on this one I thought it was fairly interesting. It shows the difference between the styles between two particular die sinkers. The one on the left is almost identical to the one on the right, but this particular artist, the die sinker, happened to throw a little star in the center to make his a little different. But these were purchased purchased and made something akin to like a patriotic button. There was no need to use this in commerce or anything. It was just to state your case. And our country, we see peace forever and commentary. This one is money makes the mare go, to get the animals moving, and so these were thought-provoking items. Commemorative tokens. Interestingly enough, I'll take it back 1 second. The die sinker here was a gentleman named Emil Siegel, who was out of New York. And the next token that I wanted to show you is about a gentleman who's a Brigadier General Siegel, who was involved in a battle in Arkansas called Pea Ridge. And interestingly enough, Emil, the die sinker, said, I'm going to do a token for my brother, who happened to be the Brigadier General at Pea Ridge. And it actually says not 1 cent for tribute. So it's a little bit of patriotic and it's a little bit of commemorative, both on the same item.
What kind of metals were they using? Brass?
Whatever they could
or-
get their hands on. It was brass, it was, sometimes it was just straight copper with a little zinc, I think, in there, and I think it was whatever was available.
Melted
there
down.
was no-
German silver.
What was that?
German silver, which was
Oh,
nickel.
white silver,
White
nickel.
silver, yeah, nickel and some silver. mixed
And
in.
the ones that we have are, you know, coppery looking, you know, I don't think I've ever had them, we haven't had them assayed or anything, but it was not a quote unquote very valuable material on any of these. Would you agree with that, Rick?
Oh, yeah, that's what we can use your hands on, sure.
So the sutler token, separate class of token, extremely rare. Why they didn't continue to exist, nobody really knows, but there probably were not that many issued. The sutler was often a store in danger. They traveled with the troops. They were assigned to a troop. They were the people that brought the goods to the soldiers who had excess money and could have provisions that were not necessarily brought to them, to the soldier by the government. So a sutler could be selling playing cards or paper or liquor or tobacco or things that aren't necessarily provided by the government. The prices were whatever the sutler chose to charge. They were authorized to be providers to the troops. You had to get a license in many cases.